All right, welcome to Our View from 3102. This is Tyson.
It's Richie Boy.
This is Tiankum.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about prisons, the criminal justice system, maybe a little bit of mental health. I don't know what else we got on the agenda, but let's start talking about what do you guys think about justice? What should our perception of justice be in American society and in the world in general? What should our perception of justice be?
All right, that's a good question. I think when you ask questions like that are very general in nature, it's important to evaluate what the desired end goal of a system that's regulated on a national level would be. For example, when you say, what was the question again?
Justice.
Justice.
You're good.
So, what is it that our general system of executing justice in America, what is it currently? What are the fruits of that system currently? And where is it that we want to evaluate where it would be in the future? I think when you begin to pick apart the concept of justice, that's an important thing to begin with.
For sure. There's something recently that's come up in academia, that's come up in conversations that I've seen across the web that talks about this concept of restorative justice. Have you guys heard of restorative justice before?
Explain.
All right. So restorative justice is basically the concept that any crime you commit or any fault is not the responsibility of the state to prosecute you for that crime and to charge you and to imprison you and to punish you, but that any crime that's worth diving into, that's worth distributing out justice for, is crimes between two people. So if you hit someone with your car, then the idea of restorative justice is you have to pay in terms of your money or your time or do something so that the other person gets a restoration of how things previously were. So one interesting thing about restorative justice is that restorative justice would eliminate the idea of victimless crimes. So if someone possesses and smokes marijuana or deals drugs in general, if someone has sex with a prostitute, if someone, whatever this thing is, that it's between two people that are both consenting, a person selling drugs and a person buying drugs, a person in their home using drugs for their own recreational purposes, a person having sex with a prostitute where they both agree in the exchange in terms of money, that the interesting idea is that has no bearing on the state, that the state should have no voice in that, and that the state should only act as a mediator between two parties when there's some sort of crime committed or there's some sort of disagreement. And so in that sense, the state isn't, the dealer of justice maybe in our conceptual sense, but in our normal sense, but is more a mediator between parties. What do you guys think about that?
Sounds like you're trying to put more emphasis on more civil court related issues. It would
Yeah.
turn into, instead of incarceration as a punishment, it'd be a civil dispute that you.
Yeah, just sort of like Judge Judy, but for every
Right.
case, Judge Judy's just the mediator and she figures out what's going on. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Richie?
Still thinking, man. I mean, that's a good idea, I think.
Yeah, I like it in principle, but I'm wondering if we can poke any holes in this argument of,
Because it's not going to harm the states. It's going to benefit both sides.
Yeah, that's an argument that I've heard. I'm sorry if I cut you off there. Something that I've heard in relation to this argument is that it seems maybe a little juvenile, that it seems like something that you would see in a kindergarten class, that Tommy hurt my hand, and it's like, okay, well, kiss Tommy's hand better and tell him you're sorry, and then everything will be good. But in some sense, I think that it is a little bit like the state plays mommy or daddy or the teacher in terms of disputing things. Mm-hmm. But I think I think the real benefit is it changes how we view crime, and that a crime is anything that's worth punishing is really only when there's two people involved. But of course, there are crimes that more than two people are involved. Like, maybe we can come up with some ideas together, but. Maybe mass fraud or something. What about these people that hack into servers and steal millions of people's passwords? Then it doesn't make sense for the arbitration to be between millions of people, the perpetrator, and the state as the mediator. What would we do in that case? Is there a concept of restorative justice in that? the state restore your former sense of privacy, or how would that person be punished in a restorative justice system? I don't know.
That's true. I think that brings in an interesting concept of where do we draw the line in society of what is a serious crime and what is something that can be corrected through other means besides like tough incarceration policies or anything like that.
Yeah. What would you guys think is a crime that we currently punish that maybe... I mean, I think we've talked about drugs. I've mentioned prostitution as well. Those are two things that people with more libertarian ideas tend to say, there's no point in punishing that. Can you think of anything else that might be... I mean, okay, let's take it to a logical extreme. Let's take it to the extreme of child pornography. That's a pretty extreme case.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine that perhaps a very extreme libertarian would be fine with something like that. As vile as that sounds. Like, I'm not trying to, make a mockery of this, but what would you guys think in extremes? I mean, I guess that the victim in this case would be the child, whoever's being exploited. So I guess, is it just a matter of consent that it needs to be, as long as...
If the child is consent with the porn, I think that should be fine,
But can a child consent?
That's the issue.
I don't think so. Just like dealing drugs to children, like, I think it should still be a crime to deal drugs to children because they might not be able, a child can't understand the consequences of taking drugs. So is it just that once we all, hit age 18 that everything's good, and that, things that are typically taboo in our culture like drugs and sex is just like you can do whatever you want in terms of those and then just protect children?
I think age 12, according to Piaget's philosophy.
Oh, shoot, we're bringing in some Piaget.
And when kids hit 12, they basically form the cognitive ability, so they know what's wrong and what's right. So I think by the age of 12, if the kids think that it's fine with it, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Do you think that there should be some sort of graduated system? Because I agree that, I don't know, we have kind of these hard lines in society right now where, like, 16 is where you can drive, 18 is where you can smoke tobacco, for example, 21 is where you can drink. Like, what are the roles of these graduated systems in the justice system? Should it be like that? Should it be like, what if there was some sort of cognitive test that you could take that evaluated your mental age, and if it proved like, yeah, you're at the level of an 18-year-old, then you can buy tobacco even if you're 14? This is sort of getting away from the concept of justice, but it's an interesting idea. How do we view criminality in the sense of being a juvenile in our society?
That's true. And how do you feel towards juveniles being tried as adults? I mean, it's kind of like a similar concept from a different angle.
Yeah, that's really true.
Where your take would be, it'd have implications on both sides of how you view what juveniles should be able to exercise as their own independent right.
Yeah, and it seems like, there's some analysis that goes on at the court level, I would imagine. In order for someone to be tried as an adult, they would need to do some sort of battery of mental or cognitive tests that would prove, like, this person understands the consequences of their actions, and therefore we can try them as an adult, even though they're technically a minor. So I think what you're bringing up, Tank, is that what if it was the reverse, that what if you got charged with a crime as a juvenile that would be illegal if you're a juvenile, but that would not be illegal if you were an adult, and they conducted a similar cognitive test and said, oh, he was old enough to consent to whatever this was, so it's all good. I think that one point in this whole debate is, do you think that the state should have any responsibility as sort of a moral lighthouse for the society? Does the state have any responsibility to tell people what's good and what's bad? Or, who tells it? I think in the world we're increasingly seeing a decrease in religion in the world, that religion isn't providing people with the moral compass that they need. I feel like the states are also, states are, the state in general, governments in general are allowing for recreational use of different kinds of drugs, and we're sort of relaxing as a society. But do we still need that moral compass? No. You don't think so? Explain. No, I think that's a fine point.
If the government can tell you what to do, what's right or wrong, I think that's totalitarianism.
Okay.
Like, it's like the Bill C-16 in Canada. Like, it compels speech that you have to call the transgender group by their pronouns.
Yeah.
So if you don't do it, they can sue you and go to jail. That's like totalitarianism, man.
Okay, that's fair.
And I think a real issue of the fighting the battle on crime in America in general is they view fighting a crime the same as punishing the person.
Yeah.
Being tough on crime means being tough on the perpetrator of that crime. And that's kind of a loss of perspective from the government part on what are the circumstances of this person acting out on these crimes. Is it a person from impoverished areas where, as a means to survive, they're resorting to dealing drugs and they're implemented from a young age, kind of indoctrinated into this lifestyle of crime? And is that something that you should reduce their opportunities because of the way they were raised and restrict their future, or is it something that you try to educate and then reinstitute into society? And when that happens, then they can act out their pursuit of a brighter future without resorting to just crime. Educating them that there's different avenues besides one way of getting outside of their circumstances.
I think this goes in a direction that I want to approach with this conversation, and so let's maybe continue this train of thought. Maybe broadly, the question would be, what do you think is the role of the criminal justice system? Is it to punish? I think that's how we traditionally think of it, that you commit a crime, you do something bad, and you have to pay for your actions. But what part of that is rehabilitation focused? Should that be the focus of our criminal justice system? Is that if you commit a crime, it's not that you just need to be told to go to timeout, but that instead it's, hey, your life's going on the wrong path. Let's educate you so that you can change your life around. And maybe if that's okay, I might start with that. I think, I do think that there needs to be a greater focus on rehabilitation. And I think, if we look at recidivism rates in prison and people who continue to go back to prison, I heard an interesting quote the other day that I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on maybe when you guys speak, is that in our society today, prison is a graduate school for criminality. So you go to prison not knowing maybe how to be a real criminal, and then you socialize with a bunch of criminals, and then you become a professional criminal. You learn how to evade the law. You know how to commit crimes in the best way possible, and jail just makes you a better criminal.
Right.
So I think that if that's what we're doing, then that's not very productive. But obviously, if you go to jail, you need to be able to socialize. Like, the solution isn't, put everybody in solitary confinement so they have no one to talk to and no one to learn from. But, how could we channel the social energy of a prison into something more productive when you have just a large population of people, some of whom might be mentally ill or people who've had tough backgrounds? I don't know. I was thinking this week about different solutions, like, do you do some sort of prison book club where you have, people chatting about ideas and you try to focus the conversation towards something productive? Do you do something where conversations tend to be supervised by someone so that you can't just talk about crime or talk about, you can't glorify your past actions? So that was a lot. Those were a lot of thoughts.
No.
But what do you guys think about, this role of the criminal justice
How
system?
about we just decrease the criminal rate by 100% by publishing higher execution?
Okay. So that's one option, is execute.
Execute.
Yeah.
So it's all about incentives. When people realize there's higher consequences for their actions, they will stop doing it. Like, say, if you rape a girl, you'll get executed. And I would assume the rape rate would go down a lot.
Yeah.
No one wants to die.
Yeah, there is that role of the justice system is, what is its role as a deterrent? That's one of the reasons why people don't commit crime is because I don't want to go to jail. Like, I could do this, it might make my life easier, but I wouldn't want the consequences.
Another idea is that Jordan Peterson talks about the crime rate peaks at 14 and dies off when you reach age 27. How about we just enforce a school education on how to behave like a good citizen in this country? And
that is true.
What would that look like? I mean, do you have a class in school that goes over ethics?
It should be a mandatory class, like life skills.
Okay.
Because a common theme in high school is you'll have some students that have goals and dreams that are already set, and they feel like they have a direction in their life that they want to head, so they find meaning in high school at a young age. That's not always the case. There's some kids that don't know what they want to do with their life, and they struggle to find the importance of why do I go to high school to learn calculus or things like that. If I'm just going to get out of high school and start doing anything possible to make money besides going to school and getting into a career. And so a lot of complaints that you hear in high school, it's pretty common, is the lack of education on living actual life. And you're learning a lot of concepts that are educational based.
Yeah.
But I think, still making that the priority in school, obviously, but also supplementing it with more lifestyle-based classes where you can learn how, budgeting works, putting more emphasis on things like that, putting more emphasis on acquiring skills that would make you an asset for someone who's hiring a job.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be this career route. There's different ways to enter a career. And I think that's where maybe public school is lacking, is giving all kids from all different perspectives and backgrounds a direction in which they feel like they can head after high school.
Yeah. The argument that I've heard against that is that high school isn't there to teach you all the skills of life necessarily, but that it's there to teach you critical thinking skills, to teach you literacy, to teach you all these things so that then you can go and teach yourself the rest. That's why in high school you don't learn to file your taxes, because if you're literate and generally, just how to read something or how to learn something, how to critically think about something, how to do basic math, then you could go and learn how to do your taxes by yourself. But I do think that there is, room for more of that. There's a lot of people that, the joke is, the student asks the teacher, when will, in math class, when will we use any of this in our lives? Like, will we use any of this? And the teacher replies and says, no, but one of the smart kids will. And so the idea is that, like, if you're dumb, you're probably not going to use calculus or trigonometry, but the 3 kids in the class that are going to be engineers are going to have to know how to do it. So are we only teaching towards those 3 engineers and everybody else just gets left behind? And it's like, you probably won't need this. Or do we stress enough that the reason why we teach math and the reason why we teach science and why we teach literature is to focus on these, basic skills? So I think this diverges a little bit from the conversation, but certainly education has to do with, why people commit crime. And maybe these people don't see a future. They go to school and they realize, okay, well, I'm not going to be a scientist. I'm not going to do anything with math. I'm certainly not going to be an author or some sort of literary critic. And so what is there to do? And maybe they don't see all of those paths. And so if there was, maybe a greater focus on a career explorations thing, people could get an idea. And I also feel like trades are stigmatized sometimes, that if you just say, I want to be a carpenter, or I want to be a plumber, or I want to be, some trade or electrician, that people go, you don't want to go to college, like you have to go to college. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a stigma that we don't necessarily need. But
another thing that's interesting about how we tied in education and how there's different types of students, I think that's also a problem with the approach to our crime system, is we subjugate everyone to the same standard of inherent ethics and knowledge of what is right, what is wrong, and we expect them to know inherently that their actions are obviously wrong, and that by putting them in prison, you're reminding them that, okay, don't ever do this again. And when they're ready to go, then they won't ever do it again because they got their punishment.
Yeah.
But what they're failing to realize is that these people were raised, for whatever reason, they developed and they associated right and wrong in a different way. And maybe they know that they're doing something wrong, but they believe the cost of what they're getting in return is worth the wrong choice.
Yeah.
And so when they leave prison, they haven't changed that type of thinking. And so, and you mentioned how it can even get enhanced by learning that there's other people that think similar ways as them, and they learn better methods and getting what they want, and it's kind of like a cycle. Once they leave, they have, less civil rights, because now that they're
convicted felon.
Felon. It's hard to get jobs. It's harder to do a lot of things, get welfare. And so they see restriction of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they see a lack of help given. And so they just keep resorting to what they knew worked for even just a short time.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think that that's a major problem with the system, how it currently operates, is that, I don't know, like, if I were to go to prison and then come back, like, what opportunities would I have? You know, if you apply for college, you normally have to tell them if you committed a felony, or if you apply for a job, you have to tell them whether or not you're a felon. If you, I don't know, like you said, like welfare, like anything to do with, the state, you'd have to tell them that you're a felon. I feel like that would be discouraging to a lot of people. Like, even filling out a McDonald's application and you say, I have no experience. When I turned 19, I went to jail, and then, now I'm a felon. So not only do I have no experience, but if anything, there's something negative in my past. Right. And so those kind of people can't get jobs. So is the solution to completely just
change cultures?
What do you mean change cultures?
Because cultures are the roots of crimes, basically.
Okay. But and I think we can get to that. But once you get out of prison, should you be completely exonerated of any past crimes? Should you have any residual punishment that goes with you? I mean, maybe the classic example here would be, we have a registration system for sex offenders, and that's something that, like, if you commit a sex-related crime, you're on that list for the rest of your life, which might be appropriate, right? If you're a danger to those around you, you're some sort of sexual deviant. That if
I think that should be a good like
a deterrent,
incentive for people not to commit rape, because it's gonna be with them for the rest of their lives. Forever.
And I don't think I was necessarily saying that all past.
No, and I'm not saying it either. But I feel like if you want to encourage people to become productive members of society, I think there needs to be some level of exoneration. And I think we're changing that. I think Florida just passed a law where felons weren't allowed to vote, but now felons in Florida can now vote. So we're sort of changing our idea about this.
Well, a different possible idea that could be served as a solution that would still maintain certain awareness of what this person has done in the past, but still acknowledging their capabilities of improving the future, would be programs that are generated in the incarceration system that would lead them to avenues, kind of like a flow-in program directly from prison into a service trade that they learn in prison, a skill that they learn in prison, different avenues of which they can express their capabilities. And these prisoners, they have talents, and unfortunately they don't always get to develop all of their talents that they do have in their tool belt, and they resort to developing maybe the ones that are more detrimental to their character.
So sorry to cut you off there. So let's talk about I think this gets into a point of what should people do in prison? What should we have our prisoners do? I think there's the classic idea of prison is where you dwell on your crimes and you think long enough about them that you feel penitent and then don't want to do them again. I don't think that works, personally. I don't
should have a period of time they
I think
on their crimes, and then the rest of the time they in the jail, they should be focusing on, like, how do you get a job? Like, develop skills. Like, in China, they freaking work.
Yeah. And, what role does work have in a prison? Like, so is it like you said, like, your first, 6 months or the first third of your sentence or something is more reflective and think about what you're doing, and then the last part of it is, like develop skills so you can leave? Or should it all just be combined? Like, during the day, you have a positive place to put your energies, to put your mental capacities. You work, you develop some skills. Maybe they teach you a trade, or and I don't know. Part of this is, how is this chosen? Is this a self-selection thing where, you just choose, do you want to go to the electrician class today? Do you want to learn about being a pharmacy tech today? Or do you want to go, whatever other trades they have? Or maybe they have one that's, maybe you want to go to college, or maybe you never really learned how to read, and so part of it is, you can take your GED, you can go to the GED class, you can get your high school equivalency done. You can practice your literacy skills, your basic math skills. Should that be a self-selected thing, or do you think that prisoners will tend to choose the easy path? Like, whatever looks the easiest, I'll just go ahead and do that. And so should it be more of, they have some sort of evaluation with a therapist or with a doctor, they talk to a professional, and then they get placed in a different program based on their strengths.
That's true.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
In school, this is just a concept that I think we're all familiar with because we're in college now, but there's an obvious funnel system in schooling, in our education system, based on grades and performance. I don't think that... So the idea of a funnel system, I think, is effective. You have to get specific in what you think a student or someone is capable of performing at a given career or a given major. They'd have to be compatible for them. And
so there's some element you're saying of, when you go to college, there is an element of self-selection that some people can be a declared major from the day they start college and they say, this is what I want to do. It's possible that they change their mind. A lot of people do. A lot of people end up taking a class related to their major and they say, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm going to pursue this different avenue. And then there's plenty of people who start with no declared major and they just say, I'm going to take some classes and find out what I want to do. I feel like that could be, a potential system. But again, I think, I don't want to stigmatize criminals or assume to know what they think like, but potentially the reason why they've resorted to criminality is that they don't have that self-drive. When they go to, it's not like, ooh, you know what, I've been slinging dope for the past 10 years, but you know what I've always really wanted to do? To become a lawyer. Like, I don't know how common that sentiment is. So how do you push people in a different direction is really the question.
And I think that's why you have to implement a funnel system within prison if you were to do this reform program that we've been kind of playing with.
So in terms of funnel system, you mean like maybe you have required classes that they have to take that sort of give them an introduction to the system, and then they introduce an element of choice where you can choose your track?
And I think you'd have to implement something on a much more general level besides just academic based. It would have to be on as a complete citizen, becoming a better citizen as a whole. This could include, like you mentioned, psychiatric evaluations for mental health issues. Yeah. It could be behavior based. How have they been acting? Are they upholding a certain standard of behavior to be qualified for these programs? Are they, XXX, you can think of many different aspects that you think are important for a citizen to uphold and implement some form of physical manifestation of what that good citizen attribute would reciprocate, and how could you evaluate it?
I gotcha. Okay, so what is there, in this hypothetical system that you're developing, is there some sort of punishment and reward system that goes into it? What if you don't show up to class, or what if you I think that's one of the hardest things is you can't force human behavior. So what incentives do you give to people? Is it some negative incentive that, if you don't complete your coursework, go to your ethics class and then go to your sewing class and then go to your, reading class, that you have to, is there some punishment associated with it? You have to go clean the latrines, or you have to work in mess hall duty, or is it something positive, like, if you do this, then you can earn, I don't know,
You need a reward system to motivate people.
I think it would have to be heavily motivational based. Yeah. The opportunities are given to the ones that really show that they're hungry for it. And the ones that aren't, they just simply don't give the opportunity. That's how it works in life. And I think if you do a simulated version of that in prisons, I think it would have a positive effect.
So what do you do with the people who aren't motivated to do anything? They've sort of already decided that a life of crime is for them, so when they're presented with this opportunity to complete these courses and to learn these life skills to become better, they just say no, and they just want to stay in their cell and masturbate, or I don't know what they want to do. No, but for
That's
real,
a tough question. That really is.
So do you punish them? Do you reward them for doing good things? Do you just let people realize that some people aren't going to be interested, and you just take the 50-60% that are interested, or whatever the percentage is? I don't know.
I don't think you should punish them. You should just
motivate. Okay.
No. You can send them to a working place like manufacturing place. You basically do the same thing over and over again. Okay. Because they're not going to provide any values in the first place. So they should just go there, and then once they figure it out, that's not kind of the life they want to do. Maybe they will switch their.
That's fair. I think that's a really good idea. We have Don joining us on the podcast now. Say hi to our listeners, Don.
How's it going, guys? I just got done with my computer science thing, so I'm good.
Nice.
Welcome.
Yes, now we have 4 of us.
I guess really quickly to kind of include one last important point that I wanted to make, and then segue into Don putting in a couple remarks and getting up to date with what we're talking about. I think the important premise of, I guess, criminal systems in general is that it's a premise based on there are criminals out there that want to improve, that desire to be better and take good opportunities and take advantage of them.
Yeah.
And not necessarily the premise being that all of them want to do that, but I think finding the ones that do is a worthwhile cause. And whoever does decide that, because if we don't find those people that are in these systems, then that is just lost resources on an economic level, society level, all these different,
So maybe what we're providing isn't forced rehabilitation, but that it's an escape from the cycle of criminality and poverty. Like if people want to leave, you present them with these opportunities, you present them with the opportunity to change, and if they take it, then great. You can say, well, one soul that we saved, or one person that we made a productive member of society.
Which
if
is
they
invaluable.
Don't, if they don't, you can't force the human mind. You can't force people to do anything really, against their will. So